Hey everyone, this is Questing Scribe with another First Descendant video. In this video, we're going to be looking at 5 beginner tips to help you if you're just about to enter Axion Plains, or if you've been in Axion Plains, but things have not been as smooth as you would like. So these are 5 things that you want to make sure you have handled before hopping in, really. So let's go down this list real quick. So the first thing we're going to be looking at, your reactors. So the reactor is a largely up to you as a personal choice, depending on what descendant you're using, what skills you're using, that type of thing. You're going to want to make sure that there's an attribute and a skill boost that applies to whatever your particular character is, and also make sure you change out the weapon slots that are in there so it activates with weapons that you actually are using on your descendant. So you see mine are using submachine gun, scout rifle, handgun, and that's what I have in Valby's loadout. You're going to want this completely maxed out to get the most benefit from it. The second thing that you're going to want to take care of is adjacent to your reactors is the external components. Now, these are pretty critical. You're going to have to narrow down which of these components you want for your particular character. So, for example, for Valby, since she is a non-attribute skill user, I went with the Enlightened Mage auxiliary set. This set is good for, in general, just your non-attribute skill users. So Valby, Luna, Nell, this is a good baseline set to use on them that you can actually get pretty easily in the Sigma sector. And since I was farming it to level up her RK and to also collect cores, which we'll get into later, it all kind of just meshed up pretty well getting those. Now, what you're going to want on these sets, so there's 2 things you're going to want. One, you're going to want them cored. So if we were looking at our auxiliary power set, the 2 numbers up top, the max HP and the defense, that is from the cores. Now, the ones below it that you see in gold, max HP and MP recovery out of combat, those are the substats that were rolled when these dropped. For this particular components, it's generally advisable for your auxiliary power source to get max HP and MP recovery out of combat. For your sensor, you want to grab MP recovery in combat with max MP. For your memory, defense and MP recovery. And for your processor, it can be whichever you want. Now, like I said, those are just the recommended. If there's a particular playstyle you're leaning towards, or if you have descendants that don't use certain stats, of course, things can be shaken up, but those are in general recommended, especially if you're wondering which substats you want rolled for them. But I would definitely say at the very least, you're going to want to make sure you get like the max HP roll on your auxiliary power supply. Now, these you're going to want maxed out and cored. You're not going to need to get the maxed out core. So the maxed out core, if we're looking at this sensor here, for example, the defense, since it's in gold, that means it's as close to max as I could get. It's within that range as close to max. I don't think this is the maximum value, but it's within that bracket. You don't need to have everything gold, but you do want everything cored, so you can actually start getting these stats to keep you alive. So that is the second tip that we're going to look at. Now, the third tip is you're going to want to do the same thing with your weapons. You're going to want maxed out and cored weapons, at least 1, preferably 2. I would recommend for new players, max out the Thunder Cage. This is a weapon that can be used in plenty of content throughout the game, and it's a good gun to have, especially when you're leveling new descendants, or when you're trying to tackle content and you need a gun that can just take out multiple enemies. You're going to want this one maxed out. You're going to want it cored. I haven't finished coring this one. You can see I have 1 slot open for the cores, but you're going to want this maxed out and cored. For your second weapon, I'd recommend doing at least 2 weapons. 1 for mobbing, and that's what I'm using the Thunder Cage for. The second for bosses, that's what I have the Last Dagger for. So I've maxed this one out. You're going to want also to max out the cores on it. Now, don't worry if your cores are low in the beginning. We just want to get the initial stats out there, because you can always go back and try additional times to upgrade the core. Now, the fourth thing that you're going to want to tackle, you're going to want to make sure that your arcade tuning is maxed out at level 40. Now, there are plenty of builds that you can find where people will recommend which direction to go on this tree. Don't worry about messing this up. You can reset this as much as you like. And I would suggest, especially in the beginning, Look up a build for whichever Descendant's your favorite and see what they're doing with the arcade tuning, but you can also tweak things a little bit depending on your specific needs as you're playing the game. And the fifth thing that we're going to look at that you're going to want to make sure is done, you're going to want your module build to be maxed out. Now, this is what most people know about because a lot of content creators that talk about builds, this is specifically what they're talking about. The module build that they put in here, essentially to get this kind of build maxed out like this, you're going to have symbols on every single module slot, which means you're going to have to level these characters to 40. Go in here, spin one of these catalysts to place symbols on these slots, and you're going to have to do that for each and every one. That way you can it essentially cuts the cost of a module in half, which allows you to fill out the build with maximum modules. I highly advise that you max this out before going to the Axion Plains. And having cored and maxed external components, that means you don't have to put as many defensive modules in here if you don't want. So the only one that I really have is the increased HP, but leveling up, I usually carry increased defense. But for the final build, I don't have that here because I have the maxed out cores. So that's something to look at. All right, that's gonna wrap up this particular video. Those were the 5 items that are important that you take care of before you head into the Axion Plains. You can probably get away with not having all of them maxed, but it will be difficult especially if you're taking damage, because even if you are able to deal damage with, like, for example, if you have your module build or you have a gun that's maxed out, even if you're able to deal damage, you might take a lot. For the best experience, you're gonna want those items taken care of, and then you can go in and figure out what build you prefer for your Descendant and farm Axion to get the content that you want. So if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them down below, and I will see you all in the next video.